The following program is presented by the Multiple Sclerosis Association of America and is made possible through the generous support of EMD Serono and Pfizer. Hello, and welcome to the Multiple Sclerosis Association of America's educational web video series, A Closer Look. The program you're watching is a closer look at the benefits of exercise. Joining us today are Brad Hamler, a fitness professional for more than 20 years and author of Exercises for Multiple Sclerosis, and Jill, a person living with MS who incorporates exercise and healthy living into her daily lifestyle as part of an approach to manage her MS. We'll begin this program with a brief discussion of the benefits of exercise, especially as it relates to individuals with MS. Then we'll ask Brad and Jill to demonstrate a number of helpful exercises which can be performed while standing, sitting, or lying down. Brad and Jill, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I'd like to start with you, Jill, by asking you about your background with MS and why exercise is such an important part of your life.
Well, about 18 years ago was when I had my first flare-up of MS, if you will. I had optic neuritis. They didn't diagnose me at that time because it was optic neuritis and it was only the first time. The MRI was clear. But the doctor, I fell in love with this doctor because he didn't tell me that 60 to 70% of people with optic neuritis go on to develop MS within 2 to 3 years. 3 years later, I started having drop foot, numbness and tingling in my hands, and then I had another bout of optic neuritis, at which time they did do an MRI and it showed the plaquings and lesions from MS. I've always exercised since I was 16, and the role MS played in my life has changed a whole lot. When I started at 16, it was because I was 16 and I couldn't do organized sports. I don't have the coordination for that, but I was overweight and I wanted to be like every other teenage girl did. But as I got older, you know, it all changes why you do different things. And I realized the health benefits, and exercise has played a large part of my life because I realized how important it is, you know, to do different things with it. For MS, with my drop foot, I was telling Brad earlier that I was having problems walking, and I went to a podiatrist for other reasons, and he told me I still had good tone in this leg because the doctor had prescribed a brace, which will keep your foot flexed. But that's also telling your muscles not to work because they'll just atrophy. And braces are wonderful for people that need them, or to that degree, and someday I may. I'm hopeful that I won't. But he told me to get a treadmill and walk on it slowly, hold on for 10 minutes a day, and then work up to that. And I've been walking on a treadmill for 15 years every day since that way. And so that's where it fit in as far as my exercise and my MS. I had 2 little kids. When I was diagnosed, and I wanted to be healthy for them and be able to be there for them energy-wise and fit-wise to get them through them growing up, to be and to show them that I could still do and still be the mom that they wanted and the person I wanted to be. Yeah. So that's how exercise came into my life.
Now, Brad, I understand as part of your fitness training, you also are a post-rehabilitation specialist, and you've worked with a lot of people with MS. Can you tell us a little more about this and why you decided to write the book?
Well, post-rehab specialist is basically, you know, people say personal trainer. You know, post-rehab takes it actually, I'm not a doctor, not a physical therapist, I'm not trying to play one, but we're actually a higher level of education than just your average certified trainer to deal with people with pre-existing conditions. And when you have MS, it doesn't preclude you from anything. It's just how you're going to go about it. You know, Jill talking about, you know, how she's going to be functional for her children. You know, that's her sport. Her life is her sport. And we just take people from where they are and we go from that point. If she has, you know, issues with a drop foot, you know, a physical therapist is only going to concentrate on her foot. However, I concentrate on the whole body. And so we'll strengthen the core, we'll strengthen the back, we'll strengthen all the major muscle groups. And then just writing the book came out of after having worked with a number of Dr. Ben Thoreau, who wrote the foreword for the book, a number of his patients for a number of years. It kind of grew out of the natural, seeing how they were progressing. They were maintaining their functionality so they could do whatever it was they wanted to do for their life. You know, just playing with your grandkids or just, you know, being there for your kids. You know, you don't have to be out there to do a sport. So yeah, it just grew out of that.
Okay. Now, in the book, you wrote that exercise is important and necessary no matter what level of MS a person has. And then you go on to discuss the three main types of exercises that are beneficial to MS patients. Can you tell the viewers a little more about that?
Sure. Well, strengthening, flexibility, obviously are key. Spasticity is an issue. Joe hasn't really had, I don't think, any issues with that per se. But when muscles are strong and developed and do what they're supposed to do, it helps take the pressure off the joints. So therefore, they work, more efficiently. Flexibility and spasticity works to tighten muscles. Strength training actually promotes flexibility. It's a kind of a misconception that when you strength train muscles, they get tighter and inflexible. A muscle is designed to contract, but it's also designed to relax. And they work that way naturally. It may not feel like they want to work that way, but the more you train, the more consistently you work and show those muscles to do what they're designed to do, and that only, then you start to feel that you can, wow, I can do this. I can, walk in a way that I feel very comfortable. And that's something that, yes, we're going to talk about later on, working with Jill's gait and the gait analysis and how she's transferring her weight.
Brad mentioned spasticity. I do have issues with spasticity. Okay. I've had, since I was initially diagnosed, and in my legs. You can set your clock at 7 o'clock at night, my legs start cramping. And I think the treadmill has helped that immensely. By walking on the treadmill, it works those muscles, it stretches them out, so they're not as bad as they used to be, or not as bad as they could be. So I think that's where the treadmill has worked out as far, and the stretching exercises as well. By passively pulling on the muscles and pulling my leg up, it pulls that muscle out, and because spasticity is a horrific feeling, sure. And exercise has helped a great deal in that way.
And spasticity is a muscle not working efficiently, and it's a lot of misguided. When the myelin sheath is being basically destroyed off the nerve, there's a signal being sent, but it's not getting there the way that it would, quote unquote, normally. But it's going someplace, and it's misdirected. It doesn't know exactly where and how to get there. But the more you've trained, the more she's worked consistently over 15 years, and that's fantastic. The more you've told those muscles, we can work, we can do this, we can handle this, and they in effect get stronger and do their job. So that keeps you, obviously has kept you moving for all those years and will for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Now, Jill, we hear so often with MS that you have good days and you have bad days. Do you find this to be the case? And if so, how do you manage your exercise routine on a day when maybe you're not feeling so great?
Well, first of all, I think everybody has good days and bad days. Good point. Everybody with or without MS. So I have those just because I'm a person. As far as with my MS is concerned, I have probably good and bad times of the day for me. And I think that I have generally good days as overall, unless I've got a cold or something going on. But I get fatigued. Fatigue is a big thing with MS, and that's where the exercise also has benefited me considerably because it's energizing, But my time of exercising is in the morning. I get up probably earlier than most people do. I exercise at 4 o'clock in the morning from like 4 to 6, actually 4 to 5 or 4 to 6, depending on what I do, because that started with my kids when they were still little enough to be sleeping, and then I could just have my time. But I exercise early enough, and that gets my energy through the course of the day. So my bad time of the day, I guess, would be 3 or 4. But when I hit a wall, I hit a wall. My energy stops, and that's how it is with me. But the exercise, I think if I didn't exercise, I would be tired, much more fatigued than I am. I'd be much more stressed out than I am. My moods wouldn't be half as what they are. I just know that I'm doing something good for myself. It feels good, and I know that my muscles are more toned. The fact that I use the treadmill for the drop foot, that I don't have a brace now, that I'm still walking, to me tells me that exercise works. I do what the doctors tell me. I take my medication regularly, compliant, all that, but there's a big part of it that is you. You have to do it yourself. You have to take control of your life and say, what am I going to do to make myself feel better? I'm going to do what the doctors tell me, and then I'm going to make the choice to do those other positive things, which is eat right and exercise, which everybody should do, not just somebody with MS, everybody. But I think that has helped me, and I think the way I work through my bad times is that I do what I can do. I know what my limits are as far as what I can do and how much I can do, I wouldn't be running because I'd be falling. So that's one of the limits. I know not to do that. But I can do other things that give me just as much of a workout other than that kind of physical things. And I work as hard as I can to challenge myself. If I'm having a really good day, I challenge myself till I break a sweat sometimes. And if I'm having not so good of a day, then you have to be aware of your own body. Your body tells you what it can do and how much you can do. And if it's an off day, then I still do something. I treadmill every day, I stretch every day, and I do core every day. But it might not be for as long as or as strenuous. So.
Right. And in the book, there's the workouts for good days and bad days. It's right there, and I wrote it that way. And interesting enough, when I wrote it and gave the outline to the editor, and they do a series of other exercise books, it's usually chest day, back day, and I said, no, it's good days and bad days for MS. And they're like, well, what does that mean? I've never seen anything like that before. Well, that's just out of absolute, working with people with MS. That's what it boils down to. You never know until you get up that day.
Right.
And it's just that. If you're having a good day, why not push it just a little bit? Take advantage of that, energy level while you have it. So if we're working out 4:30 or 4 o'clock or 6 in the morning is good for you and makes the best use of your energy. But even still, some of those days when you wake up, you woke up the same way yesterday and the day before. Why is it different? Well, you don't really have time to figure that out. You got to go from where you are, make the best use of your energy, challenge yourself a little bit so that your body has something to adapt to. But also, on a bad day, don't just blow it off. That's the most important thing. Make the most efficient use of your energy. That's what I try to teach people. Whether it be a good day or a bad day, always work, the way your body's designed to work with your muscles, as opposed to trying to force it to do something that's not necessarily designed to do. And then enjoy it, and take it for what it is, move on. A lot of people use bad days as an excuse. I'll work out tomorrow and the next day, and the next thing you know, it's 6 months later. And we know that does work. And that hasn't happened to Jill, it sounds like.
So that's what exercise is with a lot of people is once you fall out of the habit, you're out of the habit, and that's, you get up I get up in the morning, and if I feel okay, if I feel good, which I usually do, I do whatever I do, whether I do just the core stuff and the treadmill and the stretching, or then I do the strength training on the alternate days. But you get up in the morning, and I learned a long time ago that nobody knows my body better than I know my body and what it feels like now. Is it feeling this way because it's Tuesday and it's raining outside and I don't feel like getting out of bed? Well, that's everybody, Or is it feeling this way because this might be something MS-y, but I'm not sure, I learned from the doctors a long time ago that you don't call immediately on everything, and it's all a wait and see. Right. So I still have at least a half hour before anything's going to be, unless something happens drastically and progresses quickly, which thank God has not happened to me, I have enough time to put something in, and that actually might help me, or I can at least it gets my mind off, what is this I'm feeling now? Is this an MS thing or just an everyday thing,
life, yeah.
Because I'm thinking about something else. I'm thinking about the exercise, and then I could pursue that later.
When you made a great point too, and that everybody has good days and bad days, and we all have times of the day in which we have a lot of energy or we have no energy, and that's when we need to incorporate our exercises into that time when we have the energy to do it. So it sounds like you're managing that really well.
Right, and it's a priority too, I think, for me. And I hope it will be or will become for a lot of people, just anybody. I think exercises should be a priority.
Just to comment on one thing that Joe said about how you feel. The first thing I ask somebody when they come in for a session is, how do you feel today? And it's just to see where you're at, and a lot of times it's just their answer and the way they answer. And I could tell a lot of times it has nothing to do with MS at all. Your job, your boyfriend, your husband, your wife, stress of life. You don't know what's going to happen with your body until you get into the workout. They walk in and I don't even know why I showed up today. Okay, well let's go. And I know where to go from that point. Halfway into it, you realize that, oh my gosh, wow, I feel a lot better today than I thought I did. So a lot of times where we are here and where we are physically aren't in sync. And the more you work out consistently, the more you can then tune into that and tune into your body. And they go, oh wow, I feel a lot stronger today than I thought I was going to. This is great. And then they're achieving goals and doing things that they never thought that they were going to be able to do.
Plus the exercise releases endorphins. So if you're mentally not on top of your game, or if you think you're feeling pretty punk about something, it takes you to a different place, you know, and it gives you the ability to look at things from a different perspective. It's true, right? It does release the endorphins, which the feel-good hormones and all that kind of stuff.
But it is a hormonal thing, but it's also just your energy levels are always changing. We're always in a constant flux. You know, it's either, you know, we tend to work out all or nothing, but our body is kind of in a biorhythm of this, and we tend to live our life that way. Life makes extremes, but, you know, you don't know exactly, you know, depending on how you ate, rested, slept, or stressed 24 to 48 hours prior to any workout determines your strength level and energy level for that time. You know, people think, oh, I didn't eat breakfast this morning, so I don't have energy. Well, it's actually what you ate for breakfast yesterday morning, the day before that. Well, you know, I don't eat breakfast. Well, I wonder, do you have any energy?
Right.
You know, so it's not always right then at the moment. You have to look at the overall lifestyle that they're also living too.
Okay. I have a question. I hear a lot from people with MS and without that. I don't have time, because it is a busy time. This is a busy world. We're all busy, you know, and or I don't have the energy, or I don't have this, or I don't have that. But there's always a reason to not get moving.
We call them excuses in training.
Well, I know, I realize that, but in reality, that's what they are. But I'm being polite. I'm saying reasons. So, how do you get somebody motivated to? You can find 10 minutes here. You can find 5 minutes here. You know, if I sit at the desk, I do this, I do that. You know, there's always.
Well, again, there's a variety of reasons why people don't exercise. We know that, but the fact is you don't have to have a tremendous amount of time. I teach about working out efficiently, you know, safely and effectively, making the best use of your energy, which, interesting enough, makes the best use of people's time. You don't have to work out for a long time for it to be effective. That's a misconception that's been around forever, okay? And it just won't go away. The fact is, if you only have 10 minutes or 15 minutes in the morning, let's say to do your cardiovascular on the treadmill, and then you have another 10 or 15 minutes at the end of the day, even though your strength and your fatigue seems to be gaining, you know, and getting stronger, it's okay, because you're still making yourself do it and getting the most out of it. What I would suggest you do is then the next time, do your strength training early in the day, and that way you have yourself on a kind of a schedule, so that you're doing it 10 or 15 minutes at the end of the day of the cardiovascular. It's accumulative. It's all good. Just doing something.
Just moving is important.
Just doing something, absolutely. What's the misconception also about exercise is, what I teach and write in my books is, more is just more. More is not necessarily better. Because eventually you run out of more. You can't do any more, it doesn't work anymore, so you don't do it anymore. The fact of the matter is, you don't have any more energy because of the fatigue to waste. You have to make the most efficient use of your time and your energy, because literally when it runs out, it's done. So if you teach the muscles to work the way they're designed to work, okay, and it doesn't have to take a tremendous amount of knowledge, it's just learning the natural function of a muscle, the biomechanics that are involved, and you work the way the muscle is designed to work, and you create your exercises with that knowledge, and that's what we're going to go over here soon. Then you start to see, well, I can do this, and I've done more than I thought I could, and it really wasn't that hard. I can do this. And then once the person even sees that, a lot of times when I start to work with somebody, they go, wow, there's a lot more to this than I thought, and they indicate that way. Working out tends to be, we think of all of this. I educate people to know why you're doing what you're doing at all times. Otherwise, why are you doing it? Don't do it just because I came and said, I'm the trainer. I said, do it. I want to teach you so you know why you're doing it. It's not about me, it's about you. So that way I just facilitate it. Once that happens, now you know why you're doing it. You're much more likely to just do it.
Okay. And speaking of which, in just a minute, we're going to see the demonstration part of the program. But before we do, can you take just a moment to explain how someone should prepare for an exercise routine, including any guidelines to follow?
Sure. Obviously, consult your physician before you start any exercise program, you know, and especially with MS, consult with your neurologist, you know, and see that you're cleared to exercise. And unless any kind of major other, you know, issue, I think, of course, they're going to say, sure, go ahead. But then what do I do? All right, the first thing is, you know, you don't start out to try to set any records. You know, always the guidelines, whether you have MS or not, is to start slow, and you have to build up on it, you know, over time, and be patient. Give yourself, you know, the benefit of the doubt. You're not going to, you know, turn around, you know, 15 or 20 years of a life, you know, in a couple of weeks. You know, be patient. And we talked about that determination factor that, you know, what I found in through working with Dr. Thrower's patients and my clients is that they all have that will and determination. A lot of times, with the personality types, that determination can be a two-edged sword. You're a very driven, type A personality person, and it works well in your life in other aspects. But when you get into exercise and you try to make your will and determination make it something that it's not, people get frustrated. And then we know what happens when you get frustrated, you want to stop. So it's learning, again, the things I talked about before, the education and working with your body, and then giving it time. And once you have that time, you'll start to see how your body starts to respond. And when it starts to respond, then, as we say, you're hooked. And it's going to be a part of your lifestyle every day.
Okay, all important points to consider. So are you ready to show us the exercises?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Brad, why don't you tell us a little bit about the first series of exercises?
Absolutely. So we talked about flexibility and actually stretching. Okay, and one of the things I want to actually make real clear is that actually stretching in and of itself as a warm-up, actually in sports medicine, doesn't constitute a real effective warm-up. You want the muscles to be ready to stretch. And a lot of people do what called static stretches before the body's even ready to begin that. And what I suggest and what we recommend, and doctors recommend now in sports medicine, is to do some kind of light cardiovascular activity, walking on a treadmill or outside for about 10 or 15 minutes, or a stationary bike if they can't walk comfortably on a treadmill, or a recumbent bicycle, which is a seated bike, just to get the body ready to go into the flexibility training, okay?
Okay.
And so we're going to talk about some stretches now, okay? And actually we're going to start on the floor, Jill, and we'll go down the floor.
We'd like to say Jill has already warmed up.
Yes.
She's
and by
good
the
to
way,
go.
Jill warmed up before we started, okay? And actually have you facing that direction, Jill, okay? And we're going to do that, actually we call it a piriformis or a back of the leg stretch, okay? So you're going to curl under, okay? And it looks like she's going to kind of curling herself into like a pretzel position here, but actually not pulling, but just holding that leg. I want you to sit up real straight, Jill, and she's going to feel this stretch here, all right? A lot of the problem that people have with MS is feeling like they're really tight and inflexible, okay? And she's not pulling. You notice that she's holding the tension, all right? And then you want to switch sides, switch your legs over, okay?
If you're in the middle of having a spastic bout, does stretching help?
Well, and we're going to get into that, actually, the strength training along with the flexibility and the static stretches.
Right.
However, if you're in the middle of a stretch and it actually starts to, in other words, flare up, I want you to then release that tension point for a moment. Let it kind of relax, and then see if you can't reestablish that tension again. But again, a lot of times people think of the stretches as pulling. I want her to hold this tension. Okay? And a lot of times once they hold that tension, it tends to naturally relax anyway. Okay? All right, how's that feel?
Good.
Good. All right, let's go into a quadricep with a hamstring stretch for someone who cannot stand up and actually do the hurdler stretch. We're going to face this way, okay? And you're actually going to turn that leg to the inside. The traditional way that we used to teach it was actually a hurdler stretch with the leg out the back. And that's actually not good for your knee. And again, when we were talking about stretching, it's actually reaching out beyond your toe, Jill, and that's so you're not bending over, but actually extending out. You're going to hold this for about 10 or 15 seconds, and she's going to feel the back of this leg stretching or feeling that tension. How's that?
So it's more about elongating, not bending over, but elongating, stretching out.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you switch to the other side. Absolutely.
And of course, these are good for all of your clients, those who are ambulatory, those who have balance issues, or those who are seated.
Actually, you know what? And then what we'll do is we'll stand up here in a second for those who feel comfortable in a standing and ambulatory, who can actually maintain and stabilize their own position. We're going to do that. Show you two variations here in a second, doing that way. Okay? How's that?
Good.
All right. Make sure to keep this back really flat, though, really straight, not just bending over. All right? Extending out beyond the toe. There you go. Jill's very flexible. She's very good. All right? So let's go ahead and come on up. All right? There we go. Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Now what I want you to do is actually facing this way, and I am actually her immovable object. Okay? And I want you just to hold on to me here, all right, so with this arm, and you're going to reach back and you're going to grab your left foot, okay? And she's going to stretch out her left quadricep by not pulling her foot, but actually putting her knee next to her standing knee. And I want you to flex your standing leg a little bit. You might feel more stable that way, okay? And then she's going to feel your quadricep stretching. Right. And I want you to stand up real straight. There you go. All right.
I tend to look down.
Okay. And then
I'm afraid I'm going to fall over.
Okay. I got you. You're not going to fall. All right. And then you switch sides, okay? Just make sure we are balanced, okay? Now I want you to bend that standing leg so you feel more stable and put this knee next to that one. There you go. Now pulling on the foot, okay? All right. Good. And then down. All right, how's that?
Well, except for my balance, it was good.
Well, and then actually the more that she actually then does these stretches, then you're actually going to use your stability, your core to start to stabilize and feel a little bit more comfortable. All right, but if you cannot, all right, and if you want to sit on the end of the bench here and you don't feel comfortable, doing that stretch that way, there are other ways we can incorporate stretching. It's kind of difficult for the lower body when you're in a seated position, all right, but things like just for like shoulder stretches, or the upper body. We talked about actually being able to stretch out the shoulders, grabbing her hands here and pulling back and down, all right, at the end of a chair, right, that way, all right, and feeling, all right, can't actually stretch that way, but she's stretching out her pecs, her shoulders from the front, all right, and we go from there. Actually, if you were seated again, have a seat back here again with Jill, and you could not stand up, a very common stretch, and shoulders tend to get really tight. I want you to take your arm and I want you to grab by the elbow, okay, and not pull, but just hold as that arm goes across the body and relax your shoulder and feel her tension of her stress point on the deltoid here, all right? Do you feel that stretch? Okay, and then you switch sides. These are stretches that you might even be able to do before you just get out of bed in the morning, okay? Very common, you could reach overhead, grab a hold of your elbow and stretch out a tricep, which is the back of the arm, okay? Reaching here, grabbing that elbow, and then holding a tension point, not pulling, okay? I don't want you to pull. I want you to hold that tension point, okay? All right, then we switch sides, all right. Good. All right. Now, the next place that we would actually go into is actually, and getting into some resistance training, is actually for the core. And core is very important for everyone, okay, but especially for those with MS, okay? And we talked about this before. It's the connection between the upper and the lower body. And everything emanates from the core, all right? It's the foundation, a lot of people think, is the lower body. But everything emanates from here. And that's the first strengthening we're going to talk about, exercise that we're going to do. And I actually have Jill go on the floor here, okay? Go ahead and go down the floor. All right, lay down on her back. Okay, good. Now, a lot of times folks talk about working with a stability ball, and Jill had mentioned to me before that she works on a stability ball. Whether she's doing that or here on a mat, since we don't have a stability ball, she still can strengthen her core because it's about shortening the distance between what would be her rib cage and her pelvis. And it's not a lifting motion, it's a shortening motion. So if you were lying on a ball, I would just say make sure that you don't start in a full extended position, but where your spine would be supported, okay? I want you to cross your hands over your chest, all right, Jill, and your shoulder blades are going to come off just off the mat enough to create a little bit of a tension down around the abdominal area, and then think of your ribs sliding down towards your pelvis, not lifting up, but sliding down. I know this doesn't look like she's doing a lot, but you repeat
feel like
this.
It feels like a lot. Totally different than what I usually do.
Because she's doing what the muscle's designed to do, and that only. Okay, and that creates the tension again, for the muscle to contract against. There you go. And that's what you would call, they call it basic crunch. We in sports medicine call it spinal flexion, because when her muscles of her abdominal wall, her rex abdominis contracts, her spine naturally flexes and bows on the opposite side, which actually is a very protected position for the spine. Okay, she's not.
How many repetitions do you usually recommend?
Okay, again, how many reps? And we talk about people starting out, a little is a lot. So if you can only maybe do 5 or 10 of these, especially if you're not used to doing them in this way, you may think, oh wow, I can't do hardly any at all. But doing it consistently, okay, on an every other day basis, coming back, then your abdominals will get stronger. You'll be able to do a few more reps. I would say start out maybe with 10 or 15 repetitions, 2 or 3 sets, okay? And we have a couple other variations we can go over, and then you build upon that. Generally, what you would do is keep it probably on the range of about maybe 20 or 30 at the most, okay, repetitions at any one time. All right? You don't want it to get too long, too much. You don't have to do hundreds of repetitions. If you are able to do hundreds of reps, you may want to look at your form. Would you able to do 100 of those that way?
No.
Exactly. Then that would tell you that you're on the right track.
So you're teaching you to be efficient.
Exactly. A little is a lot. And that's very important for people with MS because fatigue is going to take over anyway.
Right.
And you'd have to stop. Okay?
I like that one. That's a good
There you go. All right. Just to show a quick variation, we'd bring the legs off the ground, okay? And actually before, a lot of people would see that they would cross their ankles this way. And the reason I would not suggest that is because that creates a little bit of access or fulcrum for resistance going out of the range of motion. All right? In other words, it's not necessary. I want you to put your feet next to one another, hold them at a right angle, okay, meaning a right angle to her pelvis, and then repeat the same exercise it looks like that we've done before. However, because of this right angle at the hip to the pelvis, she's created a greater tension point, so therefore the muscle has to contract much sooner and then much more intensely. And as you can see, if you got the look on her face, it says it all right there. Okay? And a little of these is a lot. I call this an advanced crunch. All right? Good. And stop. All right? And then we'll go over that one more variation. It's called a reverse crunch. A lot of people talk about the lower abdominals or the lower abs. It's actually just the lower attachment of the rectus abdominis, the same muscle that's here, attaches there and goes down towards the pelvis. It doesn't start over and begin a new muscle group. Misconception people have. But anyway, the way we would work is relax the upper body and take this right angle and not lift, but roll the pelvis back towards the sternum in a rocking motion, like her hips are like a rocking chair. There we go. And then you're going to start to feel, quote unquote, that lower attachment of your rectus abdominis contracting.
Yes, you do.
There you go. Right.
It's amazing.
Okay. And I know it doesn't look like a lot, but trust me, get on the floor, do a few of these. It'll tell you. Become self-evident. Yeah, absolutely. Good. Stop. Excellent. All right. All right. And come on up. All right.
Brad, can you give us an example of a resistive exercise for the lower body?
Absolutely. Okay. One of the most basic exercises there is actually what is known as a squat. Okay. And the moment I say that word to my clients, they get that look on their face. Okay. But the fact of the matter is, everyone knows how to do a squat because everyone sits. Okay. And you can actually, have somebody go to a therapist and put a ball on your back, and they'll say do it and lean against the wall and do a squat that way, which actually can then feel more stable, but it's actually not a very natural motion. And what I say to people is, I want to train you how it's going to be functional for your life. And again, you're going to squat like you sit. So if we were going to sit on this bench, which she's actually not going to, okay, you would actually have to reach back from the hips. Okay, you'd have to sit back. And that is what's known in the business as an athletic squat.
Let me close just in case I fall.
All right, so I got you. You're not going to fall. Okay, I want you to extend your arms out in front and move your upper body just slightly over the lower body. But the moment you do that, Jill, okay, I want you to bend your knees, okay? Don't try to lock out, because then you will feel like you're going to fall back.
Okay? How far apart should my legs be for a squat, for stability purposes?
I want you just slightly wider than hip width distance, and your stance is going to be open, okay? You don't squat from here, you squat from here. You squat from where you sit, okay, or you would sit, okay? I think you get what I'm saying. Now, you don't have to go all the way down for this to be effective, by the way. I want you to sit back, okay, head up, back straight, and sit back. Go down as far as you feel comfortable with, okay, keeping those knees open, okay, and then come back up, now come back up, don't stay there, okay, and then repeat that, okay? There you go. Keep your head up, your back straight, and sit back.
If you were to let go, I would fall over.
Okay, well.
And she's never locking her knees, right?
No, absolutely not locking, but no, you're doing it. You're doing it.
Well, maybe it's just knowing that you're there.
Okay, but that's fine. But if that means you can only go that far and back up until you get strong enough, that's fine. I just want you to make sure that you're not collapsing your knees onto one another, okay? In other words, go ahead and stop for a second. Your body's going to want to try to do this kind of thing, and that's what we call a very important factor called a Q factor, that your hip, knees, ankles, and toes are always in proper alignment so that you're working biomechanically safely and correctly. Interesting enough, once you feel that alignment, this becomes much more natural, okay? It is going to take some time. This is important because when you use these larger muscles, at one time, you start to realize that, wow, I'm breathing kind of heavy here. I'm out of breath. That's actually cardiovascular conditioning or strength training for the most important muscle in all of our bodies, your heart. Okay, aerobic activity is not the only way to actually get your heart pumping through these larger muscles being used to have a cardiovascular benefit. You can do it with one of the most basic exercises there is a squat. Okay, and that's sitting back, head up, back straight. Okay, squat like you sit and sit like you squat.
And that's actually pretty advanced, so that's for someone who's ambulatory or for someone with balance issues. He or she might need a little assistance or something to hang on to do that.
Actually, we have the other, if you have a counter or stand at the counter, or if you had a body bar like this, what I would say is do the exact same motion, but lightly rest your fingertips on that bar. Don't use it as a crutch. But at the same time, the moment you move forward, always make sure that you're bending your knees, Jill, okay? And then feel like your head up is sit back and squat from that way. There you go. And then come back up. When you come up, don't lock out your knees, okay? And keep your back in that right angle, okay? Head up, back straight, and sit back, okay? that actually make her feel more comfortable. But then over time, as these muscles do their job and get stronger, I'll take away the bar. Okay? Very good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, we're going to talk about two types of resistive exercise, which would be isotonic and isometric, correct?
Okay, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Just to clarify, isometric is actually a muscle opposing itself. So it would look like you're not actually lifting something, but you're actually creating a tension of a muscle. In other words, if you actually took, Jill, and you put your hands together and you literally pressed your hands together and tried to think of contracting your abdominals, your pecs, okay, these muscles here, and holding that tension for about 10 or 15 seconds, and then relax. And also, by the way, breathe. Don't hold your breath. Right? We've talked about that.
Breathing's important.
Okay. You can create a muscle contractional event, okay, which is a type of resistance against itself, okay? And then you relax. If that actually becomes easy for you, you actually can use an unmovable object. Okay, I'm going to be here, unmovable object.
He thinks.
Okay, and that is,
Maybe
if
she's
I was a
stronger than you
wall,
think she is.
you would do what's called a wall press. All right, I would be the wall, and she's literally taking her weight and holding her body weight. Okay, actually, I want you to go past the right angle and hold it at a right angle. Come towards me, and then hold it right there. Relax your elbows a little bit down, and holding that tension. Her own body weight is going to create. Okay, and hold it right there. All right, and hold that tension. That's going to create enough resistance for the muscles to start to get to adaptive. She's automatically going to the next thing, and that is isocatonic, which is actually an emotion against a resistance. And she's using her own body weight to push against me or a wall to actually create an exercise for the pecs, and that's press. That's a chest press, okay? The next natural progression from that would be to then go to a free weight exercise, which we're going to demonstrate here on the bench, okay? I'm going to take some light weights, 3s and 5s. We're going to use some 5-pound dumbbells here, okay? And we're going to do what's called a chest press. Okay, I'm going to come right around here.
Excuse me.
All right, make sure to spot here. And I want you to start with the dumbbells up and together, okay? All right, Joe, and I want you to go down towards a right angle, not beyond that, to the pec, okay? And then up and together. How I kind of remind my clients is think of a base of a pyramid going up to the point of a pyramid, all right? Not beyond that, all right? And this is a isocatonic, if you will, or a free weight exercise for the pecs. Now, with the dumbbells, because they're not, they're a free weight, they might feel a little hard to control, correct? Mm-hmm. Right? Well, this is actually a little bit more of an advanced exercise because she's having to control this resistance at the same time she's actually moving it. Another way to feel a little bit more controlled is to actually take a form of a bar, okay? This is a body bar. And she's going to do the same motion, okay? However, because the bar is connected to itself and she's connected to the bar, doing the exact same exercise is going to feel a little bit more stable for her to do that. But guess what? The muscles are still working the same way.
Does that feel a little easier, Joe?
It does, because my arms were working randomly before. One was, while they were both going in the same direction.
Slightly different time?
Yeah.
Well, she was actually favoring one side, which a lot of folks do anyway. Right. Yes. And so this actually becomes a little bit more aware of how to use, again, balance, that she's working in a balancing controlled motion, okay? And make her aware of it because the bar is connected, and she's connected to the bar, obviously, okay? And come on up. Good.
And then what about for your seated or balance impaired? How would you recommend those same sorts of isotonics?
Okay, so actually what we do is going to face this way, okay? And we can do a couple of exercises where we're doing actually a bicep curl, okay? Take the dumbbells here, all right? And we're going to actually, sorry about that. I want you to just kind of sit on the end of the bench here. Just kind of slide to the end of the bench. There we go. If you can see that, she's actually going to do a bicep curl, okay? And she's going to literally bend at the elbow and flex and extend down fully, but not hyperextend the elbow, and pull up to the shoulder level, okay? That's obviously the most basic exercise in the world is a bicep curl, okay? But we can do a lot of things from a seated position, okay? We can go from that, okay? We can go from there to an overhead press. Now, anytime you do something seated, Jill did it right there. She leaned back, okay? If you aren't able to maintain because this weight's too great, guess what? That's why I always work with a variety of exercises with a variety of different weights. 3s, 5s, 8s, I don't care what it is, have a light, medium, and heavier resistance to work with. And guess what? You're going to need to change the weight every time anyway. On good days, Okay, you may feel like you can do this exercise with 5s. On a bad day, there's nothing wrong with using the 3s. Okay, whatever it takes to get the job done for that day.
Well, I notice as I go through the workout, I tend to get lighter. Now I have to get lighter with my weights. If I've done back exercises and then I go into shoulders, maybe I'm not so strong with the 5 or the 8s anymore. So I rotate how I do them during the course of the week or whatever, so that so that the weights are, because I just get, my muscles get fatigued doing the other exercises. Does that make sense?
Well, what we want to do is we actually want to find an order to work from larger muscles in descending order to smaller muscles, which that would mean working core, working the chest, the back muscles, the quadricep muscles, and then into the arms and shoulders last.
Okay.
Don't go into the biceps or the arms before we do these larger muscles, okay? For kind of demonstration purposes today, we're kind of jumping around to make sure we cover everything, but that's a good thing to keep. I'm glad you brought that up. And that's in the book as well. I always talk about that, okay? All right, so go ahead and stand up for a second, okay? And we talked about this exercise before. Shoulders are really important. Everything, goes through the upper body, goes through the deltoids. And we were talking about doing what we call a lateral raise. And a lateral raise is for the muscle that's on the side, called the medial head of your deltoid, on the side of your shoulder here. And when you extend the dumbbell out to the side, I want you looking straight ahead, Jill, stand up real straight, and think of extending the arms out to the side, not lifting up, okay? She is now starting to work then the medial head of the deltoid, okay? If I said I wanted you to do this in an isometric way, okay, stop for a second, and you didn't have the free weights, stand in the middle of a door frame, okay, on the door frame, again, another immovable object, and now do the same motion, pushing your arms out to the side. Do you not feel the same muscles contracting? Yeah. Okay, so it's with knowledge. It's actually teaching folks, having that knowledge and how to create the exercises, and that's how I've always worked. Teach you to know why you're doing what you're doing, and then work with whatever you have available to create the exercise. Okay?
Now, as far as some other examples of isometric, we saw the pecs, and you just showed us with the door frame. Are there any other examples for people who perhaps are not ambulatory but maybe do have balance issues or perhaps are seated?
Sure. We talked about if you're, again, have a seat and you're going to face this way. If you are on basically an immovable object like a bench, and this is in the book as well, okay, it's called an abdominal isolation. And it's literally just contracting the muscle, okay?
This is a real visual exercise. You'll get a lot out of it.
Okay. Looks like she's not doing anything at all, but I want you to actually think of just literally contracting your abdominal wall and holding it, okay? And make sure to breathe actually while you're doing the tree leans, to breathe while you're doing this, and then release that tension. You've actually heard people talk about if you're driving in your car, squeeze your abdominals, okay, as you're driving, okay? You might want to be careful. You're road rage and, pop an ab there or something. But that's literally one way to do it. Now, if the next progression is to sit on a distable, apparatus, like a stability ball, just maintaining her balance, and actually if you wanted to make that even more progressive, if you leaned off to one side, your abdominal wall would have to contract to maintain her balance. And then obviously shift to one side or the other, and then also forward and or back.
And again, it goes back to that core strength.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, can you quickly talk us through the correct way to breathe when we're doing exercises? Because I know a lot of people do it incorrectly, and it's better to do it correctly and be more efficient.
Okay, absolutely. Well, the first thing about breathing is just do it, okay? And beyond that, there is a correct way to and when to breathe. And the way that we actually have always, and we try to teach people is, and a way to remember it is exhalation, execution, okay, inhalation, preparation. And what that means is, okay, and we'll just demonstrate here real quickly. Actually, go ahead and stand up, Jill. She's going to do, like I say, a bicep curl, okay? And you're going to take that bar, okay, take a little bit wider than shoulder width, okay? And as she gets ready to do this exercise, I want you to inhale. Inhale through your nose, inhalation, okay, preparation. And then as you execute the exercise, exhale out of her mouth. Exhale, execution. Inhalation, preparation, exhalation, execution. And breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. Okay? And if you remember it that way, and even if you don't after a while, it should fall into that natural rhythm. But the most important thing is people just breathe. Don't hold your breath, please. Okay? Because you'll pass out and then that won't be any fun at all. Okay? How's that feel? All right? Good.
I'm breathing.
Excellent. All right, good.
All right, now our next segment involves aerobic exercise, and you talk in the book a lot about the importance of walking and about doing it properly. So what does that entail?
Okay, and before we even begin a lot of after the actual warming up or the core exercises, it's called a gait analysis. Okay, and that is actually watching how Jill moves, her body from one place to another. Right, and that's actually how she's moving, and that is actually taking and walking from a heel to ball to toe execution. All right, and then how she would walk back and forth, even if I call it a 6-step exercise in the book. If she was just to walk 6 steps across, and then walk back, okay? Not like you're on a tightrope, okay, Jill. Actually, I want you to turn back around, okay? And what I want you to think of doing is having your heel contact first, but I want you to keep a little flexibility, all right, in your knees as you do that, all right? And think of actually projecting yourself to the wall, okay? A lot of folks with MS are afraid of falling.
So they look down.
So they look down.
Drop foot.
And your foot drops. The reason that they fall is because the toe catches. But if you really deliberately take the time, okay, to get that heel, ball, toe action, it's going to make you feel more stable, okay, and therefore feel more comfortable. And then you can project and walk more comfortably. It literally takes doing this over and over, 6 steps at a time and back, to retrain yourself to walk. And I know that sounds really strange because all of us just get up and we walk all day long. There is a necessity to actually kind of take walking as a real exercise to start with. Almost all my MS patients have had this as an issue, whether it be because of the drop foot or the tendency to overuse one side of the body, the other. That's one thing also. If Jill has an issue with her right foot, a therapist may only look and do therapy for her right foot. I look at the whole body. That's when we talk about the core. And I just want you to try this one more time. Before you step out with that heel, I want you to think of contracting your abdominals. Let your arms naturally move next to the side of your body, okay? And walk. Now, she's going to feel like she's probably like Miss America or walking on the runway.
Your flowers.
But the more you do it, actually, I want you to straight, there you go, and take the time, okay? All right, now you're going to have to walk a little bit slower, but also don't walk so deliberate that you feel it uncomfortable. I want you to move with a little bit of purpose, okay? See that? Mm-hmm. Okay? But don't forget this. Don't forget your core. There you go, okay?
I don't usually think about how I walk. And when you learn when you're 2, you don't think you'll have to relearn how to do this later on.
Okay. And that's exactly what I've heard almost all my clients say. And you do have to not stop and think about it, but there are certain step-by-step progressions, which I go over in the book, that you do need to take in consideration. Yeah, you have to think about it a little bit.
And keep conscious.
Right. Be conscious of it, how you're moving, and the way you're moving. The more you do it, the body only knows what you tell it. Okay? If you repeat this, okay, and you repeat any exercise, your body is going to then have to adapt to get stronger. Those muscles, the core, your foot. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to cure a drop foot. Absolutely not. Okay? But the more that you use these muscles to do their job and call upon them as opposed to relying on braces, or there are apparatuses with the walking aids. Just a real quick story. I had a 72-year-old woman who's been living with MS for 30 plus years. God bless her heart, would come in and she walked in with a cane, but the first thing that we did was she walked over in the corner and she put it there. And she left it there, in the corner for the entire workout. And she moved around the studio the whole time without it. Now, yes, we had to take our time and everything, but interesting enough, she came back after a few months together and said, she goes, you know what, I went out of the house the other day and got in my car and got to the store, and I didn't realize I didn't even bring my cane with me.
Amazing.
That's the kind of thing where it has a real application to your real life that makes all the difference in the world and really means something.
That was where the treadmill helped me out, was walking on the treadmill and getting the confidence back. But even still, sometimes I'm concerned about that. I think that stays in the back of your mind. Could I ask you a question? We had talked earlier when you looked at my shoes as far as walking, and because of stability and balance with people with MS, you didn't think you thought they were cute, but not necessarily practical.
Exactly. What I would say is that there's a lot of nice fashionable athletic footwear now. What I just suggest is getting something that's actually designed for walking. They're especially designed walking shoes. There are some that are a little bit we call clunky. I would not suggest those because that may not be safe either. But there are a number of varieties out there by a number of companies that give you the additional support, and not just from the arch, but in and around the ankle and the entire foot. that actually then help you feel more stable, okay, but also don't, adhere you or get in your way from walking, comfortably. Yeah, I would suggest maybe making a little bit of different choice, so that you then can really concentrate on that heel ball toe. If it's so distable, it actually may not be all you. It could actually be part of the footwear.
Right.
I've had clients who actually, with MS, who actually feel more comfortable walking barefoot. I commonly hear that. However, and they walk around their house all day long barefoot. I had a client the same way. She would not put her shoes on until like 5 minutes before I got there. But the moment she started trying to walk with her shoes on, I could tell she hadn't been walking that way. And I would say to her, Joan, you have to put on the shoes because you're not walking barefoot around outside. Yeah. And that's, safety purposes too. Okay.
So obviously an individual with MS who is doing well and who's ambulatory can walk and perhaps jog, but what about aerobic activity for those who might have balance issues or who happen to be seated?
Okay, there are a couple of different actually apparatuses out there, and you'd have to actually get some specially designed equipment. There is a seated bicycle. It's called a recumbent bicycle. Very common, found in gyms now and physical therapists. That's actually where recumbent bikes came from, as a physical therapy area. And I would suggest, availing yourself to one of those. Again, because it's more comfortable. If you're more comfortable, you're more likely to do it. You don't have to be huffing and puffing and out running for it to have an aerobic benefit. So those are very good. For those who actually do not have the ability for the lower body movement, ambulatory, there's an actual even more specialized piece of equipment. It's called a UBE. It's called an upper body ergometer. And actually there's a couple other companies. This is a very specialized equipment that only physical therapists had. But there's actually a couple different out there specialty items where you could take this seated recumbent type exercise apparatus from the floor, take the pedals off, put handles on, and put it on the table, okay? As long as you're trying to get as many muscles moving at one time, obviously this is the single largest collection of muscles in everyone's body. That's why it has the single greatest effect on your heart and lungs. These being what we call inferior muscles aren't going to create a greater, an individual time as great of effect, but it's the cumulative effect over time.
And it's still considered aerobic.
Well, we're trying to get those larger muscles moving at one time.
Right.
Okay, absolutely.
Okay.
So you're going to have a benefit.
Well, this is such important information. Brad and Jill, thank you so much for joining us. This concludes our program, A Closer Look at the Benefits of Exercise. On behalf of MSAA, I want to thank Brad and Jill for providing us with a better understanding of this important topic, and EMD Serrano and Pfizer for their support of this program.